attachment is not what I thought it was. So I'll start with what I thought it was. When my daughter Azalea was born, she's almost 16. Um, I had read Dr. Sears and his book on attachment parenting. And I was under the impression that attachment was something, it was kind of like a do or die. It was a yes or no, and that a baby was attached or was not attached, and that an adult likewise, had a kind of good attachment system or a bad attachment system. And he set it up to be, and he says lots of things to sort of counteract this impression, but he does in fact state that, this is a kind of intuitive system that what he says is that if it's working well, it will be very good for the mother and for the baby. And so my question was, well, what if it's not working well?
Mm-hmm.
So my initial impression of attachment was this very nebulous kind of thing. And so, but what I learned in my research and after studying attachment for many years is that attachment is a very broad behavioral system that includes our entire bodies and minds. And it's really an orientation toward connection. It's an orientation toward using another person as a form of safety. So a really wonderful way of describing it is when a rabbit gets afraid, they run to a den, to their like place, and a person runs to a person. And so that's attachment. It's that very, very profound, very primitive, and it takes everything that we have to learn to trust that someone will be there for us. Now, when we hear that with adult ears. And so we think of all the ways that we trust or don't trust as adults. But when we're babies, it's really not like that. It's much more simple and it's much more forgiving than we as adults may believe it to be. So a baby really just needs to feel sometimes like their primary caregiver is delighted by them, is aware of them, sees them as the apple of their eye, and is there for them in times of stress, most of the time, some of the time. It's not this super articulated understanding of trust and safety that we have as adults, which I think is where we get into a lot of trouble as parents, as humans, as women, with this perfectionistic kind of hope that we're going to be able to perform this so-called secure attachment, when really what that more often is a kind of very externalized, performative understanding of what we think attachment's supposed to look like. And it has nothing to do with the internal experience that a baby and a caregiver go through together.
That's such a beautiful definition of it that I really, really appreciate. And it's really different from it. I mean, not to throw attachment parenting under the bus, because it has so many, there's a lot of wonderful things, but I have some big issues with attachment parenting in that there's a lot of pressure that it puts on moms, and also puts a lot of pressure on people to, and you want to, I mean, I slept with my baby in the beginning and I wore my baby. I did all those wonderful things. I loved it. But I feel like sometimes people feel like that achievement idea of I have to do this thing, or I have to, even if I'm not getting enough sleep, or even if I don't always, even if it's not something, there's a lot of pressure to perform these actions that attachment parenting prescribes, but those things are not the things that create attachment, you discovered.
That is exactly right. And that is why, Dr. Sears notwithstanding, setting Dr. Sears aside, attachment has nothing to do with what we do and everything to do with how we feel. So you can have a, spectacularly perfect looking attachment parent who's doing all the things, and they're filled with rage and resentment. Sorry, let me turn this, my notifications off. Okay, sorry about that. So we can look like we are, perfect attachment parents because we're wearing our baby, we're sleeping with our baby, we're nursing on demand, all the things. But inside, we're filled with rage and resentment because we're exhausted. We don't like it. It's not working for us. And that wasn't me, by the way. I loved nursing. I enjoyed sleeping with my baby. I wore her till she was like 7. I loved a lot of those things, but it wasn't because those weren't the things that helped me have a secure attachment with her. Those were the things that I enjoyed because they made my life easier. They kept me connected to her. I am allergic to gear of all kinds. I couldn't do strollers. I just, I need things to be very, very simple. So for me to cook, it was just easier for me to have her on me, things like that.
Yeah. I agree.
But you can, and then likewise, we can have a parent who might look again to the parenting enterprise as not a very attuned parent who gives their child, doesn't nurse. Maybe they give them juice when they're babies. Maybe they are giving them processed food. Maybe they're going to McDonald's. Maybe they're watching too much TV. Maybe they're on their screens. Maybe the parent yells. Maybe the parent has 3 jobs and can't take the time to do, put the baby in the high chair and speak to them just so, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that has absolutely nothing to do with a secure attachment, because a secure attachment comes from that parent, regardless of their gear and their economic status and the way they look. It comes from their ability to feel their own feelings, so that when the baby yells, or when the baby screams, or the baby's unhappy, the parent can tolerate the baby's feelings and respond reasonably decently. That's all it means.
Yeah. And not every 100% of the time. Like
heck no.
Catch new episodes of the Mindful Mama podcast and other free resources, including the Mindful Mom Guide at mindfulmamamentor.com. You can listen to every back catalog episode, including interviews with Dr. Dan Siegel, Iyanla Vanzant, Sharon Salzberg, and get meditations, join our private Facebook group, and more. Go to mindfulmamamentor.com now. I'll see you there.